In this lecture, we will discuss cellular metabolism. Part 1 will cover anabolism and catabolism. In order to maintain life, certain reactions need to constantly occur. The cell is the site for these enzyme-catalyzed metabolic reactions that are needed to maintain life. Enzyme is a protein that helps these metabolic reactions to happen. There needs to be a constant supply of energy so that these metabolic reactions can happen. What is a metabolic reaction? Cellular metabolism is defined as a group of chemical reactions that happen to help store energy and then also to give energy, release energy when that is needed. Energy that we are discussing here are derived from chemical bonds that we obtain through nutrition and diet. When we discuss metabolic reactions, there are two types of metabolic reactions. One type of reaction is going to take larger molecules and break them down into smaller molecules. The other type is going to be take the smaller molecules and build them up into larger molecules. The process of breaking down larger molecules into smaller molecules are known as catabolism. Building up of small molecules into larger molecules are known as anabolism. So when you break down larger molecules to smaller molecules, you release energy, you give out energy. When you have small molecules and you want to build it up through anabolism, you need energy. So essentially, larger molecules store energy in the form of chemical bonds and release the energy when they are broken down. And if you have small molecules and you want to store the energy, it will go through anabolism and store them as large molecules. So essentially, all anabolic reactions, building up, catabolic reactions, breaking down, together are considered metabolic reactions. Again, this is an example just discussing the differences between anabolism and catabolism. At catabolism, complex to small structures. Simple anabolism is from simple molecules to complex molecules. And we will talk a little bit about these processes as we discuss with some examples. Here we see two monosaccharides. We discussed monosaccharides when we introduced carbohydrates. Two monosaccharide molecules together will go through an anabolic process to form a disaccharide and give out water. And here we also see triglycerides, the formation of triglycerides. We discuss how that happened with glycerol and three fatty acid molecules. When they come together through the anabolic process, they will form a triglyceride. And as you can see, these arrows are showing these are reversible reactions. They can go both ways. So we will have an anabolic reaction building it up and a catabolic reaction breaking it down. And these happen at different stages so that you can store energy and you can release energy in the body. Here's also showing the synthesis of a dipeptide. Amino acids were the building blocks for proteins. So when two amino acids come together to form a joint, two amino acids, also known as dipeptides, that's a catabolic reaction. Sorry, that's an anabolic reaction. But it could also be a catabolic reaction if they are broken down into the two amino acids. So again, we discussed a little bit about anabolic reaction, which is the building up of larger molecules. But the catabolism process is when we intake food. Food has different nutritional components. We have proteins, we have carbohydrates, we have lipids, triglycerides. So the catabolic process will break them down systematically, even through a stepwise process, until we get to the smallest molecule and obtain all the chemical energy that's stored in here. So here again, catabolism, breakdown of molecule into smaller units. They can be through proteins, polysaccharides, fats. They will go through different paths and eventually end up in a common path where energy will be systematically released. And this is an example of what is called the Krebs cycle or the TCA cycle, where we start with carbohydrates and they go through a stepwise process, even a cyclical process to produce energy. And we will look at this in more details later. We also mentioned about enzymes and how enzymes help these metabolic processes. So enzymes usually control the rate of how these metabolic reactions happen. Enzyme is a molecule that helps a reaction happen, may it be an anabolic reaction or a catabolic reaction, but at the same time, enzymes are conserved. They are not being used up. So this is an example where we have a substrate, which is the molecule that will be broken down. It comes in and the enzyme helps cleave it or break it up, and the molecules leave the enzyme and the enzyme is still intact and now can take another substrate to push this reaction in one way or the other. And this is another enzyme catalyzed anabolic reaction where two molecules come together into the enzyme, and in the enzyme they are joined and form a larger molecule. And with the arrow shown, they could go either direction. So enzymes are important in metabolic pathways, meaning when molecules are systematically broken down, or even if they are built up in different steps, there will be enzymes that will be needed for each of these different steps. Could be different enzymes, could be similar enzymes as well. So in this process, there will be enzymes, and one of those enzymes might be either in low levels or low speed, and that will be the rate limiting enzyme that will regulate how this reaction will occur. Usually, as mentioned here, the first enzyme of a series of reactions will be the rate limiting enzyme. That will also ensure that the reaction will not just occur halfway and stop there, but once it starts happening, everything else will happen downstream of that. So when it comes to enzyme activity, we discussed that enzymes are important to control the rate of how reactions are happening. Even the direction that it happens will be determined by enzymatic activity. So there are certain factors that can influence the enzyme activity. If there are certain non-protein components that will attach to enzymes, they are also known as cofactors. Cofactors can be ions, they can be different specific elements that will come and they will make a conformational change in the enzyme, meaning they will change the enzyme to be more effective, be more effective in carrying out the certain reaction. So once the enzyme has the factors that are needed, it will be able to carry out the reaction in a certain direction. However, given that enzymes are proteins, they can be destroyed, they can be denatured or destroyed by changes such as heat, pH, or certain chemicals that are introduced that will inactivate them. So there has to be a very controlled environment in which these enzymes will function properly to be able to carry out metabolic processes that are needed to maintain life. We will continue with part 2 in the next lecture.